What's up, my fellow harmonic traders? Welcome back to Track the Harmonic, your go-to destination for all things related to harmonic pattern technical analysis. I'm your host, Lord MC, and I'm thrilled to have you here for another episode of our weekly analysis series. In today's video, we're diving deep into the fascinating realm of harmonic technical analysis, where we decode these intricate harmonic patterns that could potentially help us navigate through this week ahead, especially after last week's jam-packed data we got. Before we dive in, if you haven't already done so, make sure to hit that subscribe button, ring that notification bell so you never miss an update. And if you find value in today's content, don't forget to give a thumbs up. It does help out the channel. I also want to preface before I get into the charts that I am not a financial advisor. None of the things I say in my videos is ever financial advice, so question everything, do your own research, and come out with your own conclusion. So having said that, let's jump right into the charts. So taking a look at SPY here, the market had a very interesting close, especially after all the data we got last week. The most bullish day for that data was jobs on Tuesday, where the market did push up about 1.45% for the day. And then after that, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday was kind of decreasing volume, short volume, not a lot of volume coming in, kind of stagnant for the most part for the rest of the week. That could have been due to several factors. One of those factors being that this coming week is a short week with Labor Day being a day off for the market. So what can we expect here harmonically off this bearish decrab for the SPY here? So it did manage to close on Friday above HOP, above 451.17. It closed at 451.19. So two things can happen here. Obviously, I would like to see if this is going to hold support above 451.17, see if that was a false breakout to the upside. Otherwise, if it's not able to hold 451.17, I would look to retest a 21 EMA maybe at 446, come back down to test a 50 at 442, and then back down to XA at 436.31. If it manages to find support here at 451.17, I can see at the next level here if I bring in my drawings to fill that gap there around, to hit first to hit above 453.67, which is a key harmonic level there. If you manage to break above that level, the next level I'd be looking at is to fill that gap around 455 and change, I believe. I think it was 455.49 to fill that gap, and then maybe double top at the highs of Thursday, the 27th of July. So that high was at 459.44. So it's interesting, we can see right now at XA how this was actually a double bottom, and right now we're actually going to be seeing, we're going to probably potentially maybe test up here. If the market decides to push up, you could set up for a potential double top. So it's going to be very interesting here. Should the market decide to push up and break above 453 and then fill that gap, the next level I'd be looking is for that double top. If you manage to break above that, then I'd be looking at 465.96 and then potentially all-time highs for SPY. If we just look here at the HSI here on the daily, it's reaching those overbought zones, those critical zones. It could still push up, so I believe that could push up and maybe generate an HSI arrow around the gap fill. So the RSI still has a lot more room to the upside before it's actually anywhere near overbought conditions, as well as the AMP RSI. If we jump over really quick to the weekly, just moving my drawings here, the weekly, you do have this bullish decrab where it clearly looks like a potential double top is forming here as you come back down here. That double top, like I said, it would be at 459 and change. So it'd be very interesting to see if there is going to be continuation to the upside here for the SPY here. The SPY did kind of almost reach that oversold condition here off the weekly where you did bounce up. So that HSI retest of the HSI midline could maybe be that top. But if you manage to break that, then yeah, I'm looking at potential 465 and then all-time highs again. I know some people are looking at the monthly right now because the monthly for the month of August you did generate here an HSI arrow with a hanging man on an uptrend. So by definition, a hanging man is a reversal candle to the upside. So it's going to be interesting to see if this is actually going to play out, and September being a relatively slower month, maybe you could come back down potentially, or you could have a situation where you just potentially test that double top and then come back down. It's still too early to tell. Obviously the month is just beginning, but we can look at a previous hanging man where it did play out was over here, exactly kind of almost similar situations. Not really, this was a new all-time highs here, but right now you did generate here for the month of August a hanging man with an HSI arrow, and during February of 2018, you hanging man with an HSI arrow, and you actually came down momentarily and then you create a new highs. So could that play out? Really hard to tell, but you can see that potentially play out as well. Just come back down shortly and then find support and then continue to probably test all-time highs again. So very interested to see what the SPY is going to do into this month. Jumping over to the triple Qs here. So the triple Qs, similar setup here to potentially do the same thing as SPY. You had a double bottom here. You did manage to close above 377.59. I have a key level there at 377.10 from a previous harmonic target there. So you can see the reason why I respect that level is because when you broke out over here, you had kind of a choppy level there between 377 and 386 where you were trading in that range, and once you break down from it, you weren't able to get above it. So on Friday you did manage to close above it, so the next level I'd be looking here for the triple Qs is to potentially test 386.41 if there is going to be continuation to the upside. If not, I do think if it doesn't hold 377.10, you could probably come back down to test that 21 EMA there at around 370, 371, and then potentially come back to test hop at 361.07. Losing 361.07 obviously would come back down to retest XA at 337 where the 200 EMA is at, and then fill down the gap there. Right now the HSI within this harmonic pattern is almost in overbought condition, so you could potentially print out a HSI arrow, which is a could be a indication of potential reversal within the harmonic pattern if it doesn't hold up above 377.10. You could consolidate. There's a lot of things going on in the market right now. We're still waiting for what the Fed is going to do when it comes to the interest rate hike, and that interest rate decision should come out on September the 20th. So the market, in my opinion, could be trading for sideways consolidation until that time period, until we figure out what the market wants to do. But take it day by day. If we look over here to the weekly is interesting, kind of different to what the daily macro is saying. On the weekly, you did generate an HSI arrow to the upside this week after the HSI was obviously oversold, and you did generate that HSI arrow to the upside. So within this bearish alt-bat pattern, the next level I'd be looking at to the upside, like I said, would be that 386.41, then XA at 387.11 where you had that double top there. You could have that double top similar to what the SPY did as well. Even if you manage to break above 387.11, the next level I'd be looking at for the triple Qs would be 403.57, and then obviously to test the all-time highs there at 408.71. Above that, you have this OPR level from this white swan calling for 424.59 for the next level if it decides to break above the previous all-time highs. So right now, the HSI, if it does go to that overbought condition before it generates a reversal candle or a reversal HSI arrow to the downside, I could see it potentially go all the way up to hop if you get bullish data, if there's going to be more continuation to the upside. Off the weekly, obviously, if you can't reclaim you can't hold 377.10, you come back down to test maybe this double bottom here at 354 where the 21 EMA is at. Losing that, you come fill that gap around 335, 334, and target one at 327.55 to complete that type 1 reaction. So very interesting to see kind of the macro daily is saying something while the weekly is saying another thing. So macros on the daily could be, like I said, this is why I think it's mostly maybe potentially a consolidation period incoming to reset a few things, but we'll have to keep an eye out on the triple Qs because it's very important. Same situation here with the triple Qs. You did generate an HSI, a hanging man on an uptrend, but with no HSI arrow. Just the SPY, you did actually generate an HSI arrow, but the Qs you didn't. So we'll see if there's going to be downside within this next month. But definitely keep an eye out on the triple Qs. Jumping over to the Dow Jones here. So the Dow Jones on Tuesday did manage to break above 345.35 and was able to reclaim the 50, the 9, the 13, and 21 EMA, and it's finding support now off the 21 EMA. So what can we expect here for the Dow Jones harmonically? First, before I get into the harmonic patterns here, I do want to say that Dow Jones is potentially looking like a cup and handle here, forming for a continuation to the upside if that pattern plays out. So what are those levels here harmonically? If we look at, I really don't have anything until 357.74 where the Dow Jones likes to trade between that 357 and the 345. But if we go over to this 2-day and the 3-day, you can see the dragon pattern has OPR around 354.36 as well as on the 3 days. So that could be the next level I'd be looking at, 354.36 and then 357 on the Dow Jones. If we go over to the weekly, it looks like you potentially found a reversal candle here off of this hanging man on the downtrend. You could potentially continue pushing up here. Something that needs to be you need to break for the Dow Jones to potentially get out and be bullish on this is to retest 357.74 and break above that. If you manage to break above that, the next level I'd be looking at would be to get that gap fill around 359, 360, and then potentially test all-time highs at 369.50. So very, very interesting to see. I do think there might be some resistance. If you can see of this trend line here, this is actually a line that you take from the lows of 2009 up until this touch point here. As you could tell from previous levels, it has tested it and found support off of it. You did find support during this time, but then after you lost support here and you tried to retest and break above it, you got rejected here back in August, you got rejected here in November, then again in December, and right now it could potentially, if you manage to break above 357, you could see that maybe around 362, depending on how long this takes to play out. So the longer it takes for this to play out, the higher it starts getting into that potential price area. So definitely interesting to see on the Dow Jones. If we just go over to the monthly, same situation, hanging man on an uptrend. So very interesting for these indices here, for these ETFs here, to see if there's going to be continuation to the upside. But keep an eye out on the Dow Jones. Taking a closer look here at IWM here. So IWM had a very bullish week in my opinion. You do have a lot of things going on harmonically speaking here. I'm going to talk about the black swan first. So you do have a bullish black swan pattern here where you did generate point D here at CD at 181.61, and you are now coming for a potential type 1 reaction to complete it at 192.20. On Friday, it did go as high as 191.86 before closing the day at 190.85. So you did generate this inverted hammer candle on an uptrend. By definition, that is a reversal candle, which could come back down potentially. You could have two things play out, especially because the HSI is overbought here. So you could generate an HSI arrow to the downside. Maybe you come back down to test 188.16 where PT1 is, find support, and if you find support here, you reset the HSI, and maybe you can come back to create a higher high, test 192.20 to complete that type 1 reaction. Above that, if you're able to hold support above 192, the next level I'd be looking at here is at 195.63, and then CD at 198, and then hop there around $203.84 from the bearish bat pattern. To the downside, if this is actually a potential reversal candle here, and you do generate an HSI arrow, and you do come back down potentially all the way down to where you are in oversold conditions, you could come back down to test 186, 181, obviously 186, test the 200 SMA and 200 EMA around 183 and 184, come back down to test 181, target 2 to complete the type 1 reaction all the way at 178.99, and then OPR at 176.95. So very interesting to see what IWM is going to do. If I bring out my second here on the weekly. So on the weekly, it does have a bullish white swan pattern where it could potentially be playing out a cup and handle, right? So that cup and handle could definitely play out and test this trend line that I have. This is the 2009 trend line, like I said, the lows. So one thing that I want to note about IWM, it's having a hard time breaking above 200. The last time it broke above 200 here was back in August, where you did go above 201.99, and from then on you really have not been able to test and break above 199. So I'd be looking at that level again between 199 to see if it is able to break above it. So I'd be looking first at 193.35 out the weekly, and then to test 199. If you manage to break above that, depending on how long this takes, if it decides to continue pushing up, you could come back to test maybe 215, that 2009 trend line, because that's the last time we found resistance there was in August, and we got rejected pretty hard down. So we'll definitely keep an eye out on WM, because it's in a tricky spot, and every time it comes back up to that 199, it always comes back down. So very interesting to see for IWM. Jumping over to XLF here, which is the financial sector here. So the financial sector had a very interesting week as well. Started to be a little bit bullish here again for the financial sector, with the potential 921 crossover happening to the upside. So what can we expect here harmonically off of this bat pattern here? The next level I'd be looking at for XLF here would be to test 35.58. You managed to break above that. You could come and test hop at 37.07. The only thing that is interesting here for XLF is the HSI. You are in overbought condition, so at any time here you could potentially print out an HSI arrow, which is a reversal back down to the downside, which could come back down to test maybe the 21 EMA here at 34.41, test the 200 and 200 EMA or SMA there between $34, then come back down to where it has found support at target 1 at 33.65. If you are to generate an HSI arrow to the downside and you come back all the way down to target 1 and find support, you could flip back up to the upside off the test of the HSI midline and then continue to make higher highs and finally break out of 35.58, as this level here at 35.58 has been a key level of resistance, as 1, 2, 3, 4 times you tested that point here and you were not able to break above it. So if you're able to get above XA here, then I do think it may be bullish for the financial sector here at 37.07. So to the downside, like I said, if you're not able to hold these levels here, the next level we're looking at would be target 1 at 33.68, which could be bearish if it does not find support here. The next level it could come down to would be target 2 at 32.42, and then that gap fill around $32 and change. So keep an eye out on XLF. Jumping over to XLE here, the energy sector. Very interesting to see what the energy sector is going to do within the next month or so, in the next couple of weeks. It's very bullish right now. It finally broke out here above. You gapped up on Friday above HOP there, and you did close the day at $90.74. So right now I'd be looking at here for the crude oil futures, which is currently at from this time here, crude oil is at $85 a barrel. So right now the energy sector looks like it wants to go for a run. So what can we expect here to the upside? Right now the HSI arrow is approaching that overbought zone. So the next level I'd be looking at here would probably be OPR there at 91.11, and then maybe 97.99. So right now, if it's not able to find support here above 90.74, the next level for the retest to maybe cool things off, because the RSI is also approaching overbought conditions. I would look to see if it fills that gap there that it left on Friday at 89.34, which is slightly where HOP is. If you've managed to not find support there and you continue pushing back down, the next level to be looking at would be XA at 86.43. Come back down to test target 1 at 82.65 to complete that type 1 reaction. One thing to note here is on XLE on the daily, you do have a golden cross on the SMA, so there could be some upside here with XLE. If we go over to the weekly, you did generate an HSI arrow last week, but this is obviously got invalidated, and you did manage to close above XA here at 90.56. So on the weekly, the next level I'd be looking at to retest point D here is at 94.71, and that 94 is kind of a key important level. If we go over to the crude oil futures here real quick, $94 is also a range between 93 and 94 for crude oil is a level that it likes to pretty much retest really quick after a breakout above 90. As you could tell here, you got a break above 93.74, so you could definitely see that go back up really quick here for the energy sector, specifically crude oil. So definitely keep an eye out on crude oil. I'm just going to go over back to XLE on the weekly to talk about this bearish harmonic pattern that we have. We have a couple bearish harmonic patterns. I'll be talking about the crab right now. So the crab, what's interesting here, like I've said, you generated an HSI arrow to the downside and invalidated that move, and are now closing above 90.56. So the next level I'd be looking at here would be the 94.71, which is point D there. A break above that, then you could see this thing go to HOP at 108.63, which would be a bit bullish for the energy sector, but I don't know how the market would react to it going above that high. So if you don't manage to hold above 90.56 and you have BC at 89.92, a key level there at 82.51, and then you can see a gap fill all the way down to in the $73 range to complete a type 1 reaction at 67.27 down the line. The HSI arrow that was generated here is coming down, but we could see a potential push back up to maybe double top. So it's going to be interesting to see what XLE and the energy sector has in store within this coming month. So keep an eye out on the energy sector. So jumping over to Apple here. So Apple had a very interesting week here, especially off of this bullish shark pattern, where it finally completed the type 1 reaction all the way to target 1 at 187.62. So what can we expect here harmonically for Apple? On Friday, you did generate a doji candle here, so it's interesting that you generated here this doji candle, which is by definition is a reversal candle on this uptrend, where the HSI is a bit overbought. So you could maybe potentially generate an HSI arrow to the downside to reset a few things, or you could potentially just consolidate here around 187.62. So for the bullish case scenario, the next level I would like Apple to test here, obviously to fill that gap at 191, manages to break above that. There's another gap here around 195, and then test target 2 at 195.81. Above that, then 198.93 is where I'd be looking at for potential new all-time highs. Should you manage to print that HSI arrow to the downside off this doji candle for a reversal or trend reversal, the next level I'd be looking at to see if it can find support of is at 184.95. If you're not able to hold support there, the next level I'd be looking at is 182.94. You lose that level, then you can come back down all the way down to 177, 174.60, 171.63 to complete that type 2 return to hop, and then maybe fill that gap there at 166. Too early to tell. Right now you do have something bullish that's coming up for Apple, and that is that 2050 crossover on the daily. If we go over to the weekly, we do see that on the weekly you did generate increasing volume off of you generated an HSI arrow off the support of the 21 EMA. So this looks like it said, like a lot of the ETFs, potential double top forming. You come back to test the previous all-time high there at around 198.23. So we'll see if that is the case. The HSI still has a lot of room to the upside before it's actually overbought, and you could potentially see Apple test new all-time highs if the market decides to push up. So definitely keep an eye out on Apple. Jumping over to Microsoft here. So Microsoft is in a very tricky situation compared to some of these blue chips. It did manage to close on Friday at 328.66, just slightly above the 50 EMA here. It did come down to test of 21 as well. So what can we expect here for Microsoft? The next level I'd be looking for the bullish case scenario if it's to push up here is to reclaim hop at 330.41. If we're able to reclaim hop there and find support, the next level I'd be looking at was the 50 SMA there at 332 and change, and then finally break above to test 349.67. If you are not able to find support here, the next level I'd be looking at to test is the 90 EMA here around 326. Obviously not able to hold that, then you could come back down for a potential double bottom all the way down to 311 and back down to XA at 304.26, the 200 EMA there at 301, BC at 292, fill this gap and then complete the type 1 reaction all the way to 272. It's still too early to tell, but I do think it's getting very tight here for Microsoft as the EMAs are bunching up together. One thing that you could potentially look for here to the upside for the bullish case scenario is that you have a 921 crossover and a 2050 crossover crossing to the upside, and you are above those levels. So we'll see if Microsoft finally starts getting some volume back again, because if not, you have this potential bear flag playing out here where you could get rejected off the 50 and come back all the way down to maybe test the 200 EMA. If we go over to the weekly did generate an HSI arrow, but that's in a doji candle here, so it's still too early to tell if this is going to be more continuation. Obviously you did generate this I guess you could call it a hanging man here on a downtrend for a reversal candle here, and you can see maybe you can come back up for a double top there at 366.78. Otherwise, if you're not able to break above that, then you have a problem here for Microsoft, where you could come back down to test 297 and then maybe a type 1 reaction all the way to target 1 at 256 down the line. This is obviously on the weekly, but it's still too early to tell. If we go over to the monthly, just like the indices and some of these blue chips, you also generated for the month of August a hanging man with an HSI arrow to the downside. So we will see if Microsoft is going to continue pushing. Otherwise, I do think it could be very bearish for Microsoft. So keep an eye out on Microsoft. Jumping over to Amazon here. So Amazon, on the daily, you do have this bearish bat pattern playing out currently, where you did manage to test above XA here on Friday at 139.14, but we're not able to close above it. So what can we expect here for Amazon? Within the harmonic pattern, the HSI still has some wiggle room to the upside, and an HSI arrow to the downside would be generated potentially there around the terminal bar there at 143.63, where the completion of point D is at. So if you're able to come back up there for the bullish case scenario, the next level I'd be looking at would be hop there at 155.75 for Amazon. Right now, Amazon, like Amazon and Google right now, Amazon and Google, in my opinion, are kind of strong stocks here compared to these blue chips that are holding pretty well above this range here, where they're not really coming down too much or going back up. They're more so finding strength at these levels and finding good levels of support here. So if this manages to break to the upside, it's going to be very bullish for Amazon. If we go over to the weekly, you do have this bearish bat pattern where you generated an HSI dot, but this is kind of getting invalidated right now. So this indecision candle and this downtrend could potentially start shifting momentum to the upside. So the next level here for hop or Amazon, if you manage to break above 139.14, like the daily is at 155.75. If you're not able to hold support, then you're going to come back down to BC there at 139, target one at 119.87, and then down the line maybe test 105.19 and fill some gaps. So definitely keep an eye on Amazon here. On the Amazon on the 1 month, which is very interesting, I wanted to share real quick. You do have this bullish bat pattern where at the completion of point D, you generated a potential scalper's dream all the way to target 2 at 147.69. So the monthly close for August was I guess you could call it an indecision candle, it's a doji candle, whatever you want to call it. It's to me, it's finding support here above the 50 SMA. So this month could be very bullish maybe for Amazon to test at 147 and then maybe 155. So right now the HSI on the monthly for Amazon is a bit overbought. So who knows? You could come back up to test at 147.69 before you finally reverse. But right now Amazon is holding pretty strong. So definitely keep an eye out in the next weeks here for Amazon, as I do think if there is some potential upside, there's a lot of money to be made here for Amazon potentially. So keep an eye out on Amazon. So jumping over to Tesla here. So Tesla obviously had a very bearish day here with an increase in volume here. You obviously had the news of them cutting prices. So you did also generate an HSI arrow to the downside here as it was overbought. So what can we expect here for Tesla? One of the things I want to talk about here is that it's potentially playing out a cup and handle here. So if it's able to find support and stay above the 50 EMA here and then climb back up, then that cup and handle potentially could play out back above to test 263.08 and even bullish case scenario to the 276, 277 range, and then gap fill around 289 where XA is at, and maybe come down the line to test 300 to the upside. If you're not able to hold above the 50 SMA, you're potentially come back down to do a 921 crossover to the downside and maybe a 2050 crossover to the downside, which could potentially bring it down again to retest 223.85 and then maybe gap fill there at 217. In my opinion, losing 223.85 could be a bit bearish here. Maybe you double bottom back down here, but there's something interesting here for Tesla right now. If we jump over to the weekly, so the weekly, obviously indecision candle here generated an HSI arrow last week. So the weekly does have its bearish bat pattern as well. XA is at 289 here, and to the upside, hop is at 343.69. So right now you could potentially look at the weekly and say that this was also oversold here, and to the upside you could potentially create a double top there at $300, give or take there. The high was at 299.29 on the weekly at point D there. So it's going to be interesting to see if Tesla is able to find support here, because if it does, you can see this thing go pretty quick to the upside. On the monthly, you did generate a hanging man here, and right now you have, I guess, 3 months in a row. 2 months in a row where you did create a lower low. You closed below the previous candle. So this month of September, it's too early to tell. We still got a whole month ahead of us. So if it's either going to create a lower low here, or close below the previous close, or you're going to negate that and potentially come back up to test a $300 level down the line. So it's really interesting to see what Tesla's going to do here. If it's able to find support here, and for the bullish case, I do think there's some good upside there for Tesla. So losing this level here also to the downside at target 1 where the 200 EMA is, if you lose that, you got a bit of a situation there for Tesla to the downside, where if you don't find support there, you could come down all the way to target 2 to complete that type 1 reaction at 177.25. So definitely keep an eye out on Tesla. Jumping over to Google here. So Google had a very bullish week. It did manage to go all the way up to 137.50 here. I do have a harmonic there, target at 138 and change. So what can we expect here for Google within the next week? You still have some room to the upside here within the HSI as well as the RSI and RSI. Right now, so you did not manage to break above XA and hold 137.50. So the next level would be looking at potentially find support would be 133.59. If you are able to find support above the 9 EMA, you could come back up to test 137.50 and then 143.41. If you are not able to hold support above this range and the XA was the level of resistance, and you're not able to hold a 9, the next level I'd be looking at would be to complete the type 1 reaction all the way down to 129.35. You could have a situation where you come back down from XA, go to 129 to complete the type 1 reaction, and then just come back for a corrected move back all the way up to hop there, or a swing, an impulse wave back up to hop, I should say, up to 143.41. If it does generate an HSI arrow, and let's say the HSI does come back all the way down to oversold conditions, that oversold conditions could definitely bring it down below 129 to complete the type 1 reaction target to a 124, fill the gap there around 123 and 15 cents. So if we jump over to the weekly you do have this bullish deep crab or bullish crab pattern, white swan pattern as well, but the bullish crab pattern called out for 125.49 and is now clearly above that with the HSI crossing the midline. So you could potentially start seeing here maybe the test of 143. Like I've said on the daily, the hop there is at 143.41, which would make sense, as that would be point C here from back in March 28th. So 143 above that, and you obviously have all-time highs for Google, which is what, 150, 155. So we jump over to the monthly. It'd be interesting. Kind of looks like a double top is forming, right? So a double top for Google could potentially be at that previous all-time highs around 150, 155 to the upside. So definitely keep an eye out on Google, because I do think there may be some upside if the market continues to push to the upside. So keep an eye out on Google. Jumping over to Meta here. So Meta is in a tight spot similar to almost Microsoft, creating a potential bear flag here, where you are having some resistance here at the 50 SMA. As you could tell here, you tested it here on the 24th, again back in the 29th, and then the 30th, and then a couple times last week. So what can we expect here for Meta? If you're able to close above here on Meta, we're gonna have to jump over to, I believe there's a harmonic here on the weekly. Yeah, the weekly here, this bullish crab pattern. The next level would be looking at it, if it breaks up above, as we generated an HSI arrow to the upside, would be target 2 at 302.07, and then finally break above to test maybe a double top here around 326.20. The HSI did generate an HSI arrow to the upside, so it was oversold on the weekly. So this could be very bullish for Meta to reclaim 302, find support above, obviously create above breaking a double top there around 326.20. The next level I'd be looking at would be around 352, and then obviously all-time highs at 383 if the market continues to push to the upside. So we obviously were looking at here the 200, the golden cross on the EMAs, and that could have actually been a lagging indicator after this crazy move. But if this hasn't played out yet, maybe the SMAs come out, and potentially down the line, then you could definitely see a potential opportunity for Meta to test all-time highs. So Meta is in a tricky spot to the downside. If you're not able to hold support here, the next level I'd be looking at would be 291. At 291, you got a big significant drop all the way down to the 200 EMA at 240, and then to the gap fill there at 213. So as you could tell, the 3-day here, 302 rejection, you got target 1 at 251. So that's a quite significant drop here for Meta if it's not able to find support here off the 50. So I do think that it could be a situation where you do come back down below 292. If the market is bearish, come back down to 275 to test these times it came down here around 275. If you're not able to hold that, I guess it would be a triple bottom, then you got a big situation for Meta to come down all the way to the 200 EMA. So definitely keep an eye out on Meta. Jumping over to NVIDIA here. So NVIDIA closed on Friday at 485.09. It's tried to test all-time highs here on Wednesday and Thursday, but it got rejected here around 493.76, where you're not able to hold support here. So the previous all-time high number there was at 502.66. So what can we expect here harmonically off this bullish bat pattern for NVIDIA? When it generated this bat pattern here, you kind of did a scalper's dream all the way to target 2, way above target 2. So if it's going to come back down for a type 2 return, that type 2 return could come back down to 451, fill the gap there around 432, test XA at 410, and then hop 389.74. Right now it's a bit difficult to say what NVIDIA is going to do. You do have the dividend date there on Wednesday, so I'm not sure if that's going to have some effect, or you just consolidate here. But if we jump over to the weekly here, the weekly, you did manage to close higher than the previous week here. So that HSI arrow, you still got so much room to the upside here. So you could definitely see, if you get momentum to the upside, NVIDIA pushing and pushing above $500 and finding support there, and maybe closing above $500 to finding a new trading range. But right now, NVIDIA still has some, if I remove my drawings here, NVIDIA still has some volume coming in, right? So there's definitely a lot of momentum into the stock right now. So we will definitely keep an eye out on NVIDIA if there is more room to the upside. Jumping over to Netflix here. So Netflix, on the daily, you do have this ABCD pattern where you were able to close above hop here at 429.22. So what can you expect here for Netflix? Should it continue pushing on upwards if the HSI does not generate an HSI arrow just yet? You can maybe see a retest around 450 and then come back up to around 485. If we go over to the weekly, we did generate an HSI arrow to the upside, where next level here, harmonically speaking, a level of resistance would be at 518.57 if it's bullish for Netflix. But obviously, the next level I'd be looking at before it gets to 518 is to break that double top there around 485. So above 485, then maybe you could see 518. If you don't find support here, we can go back to the daily harmonic here. You lose, come back down to test hop. If you lose that level of hop, you can come back down to that 50 EMA there around 419, 420. Test ABCD there at 413. Test these lows here around 399, 400. And if you don't find support there, then you can come down to complete that type 1 reaction all the way down to 352.06. So very interesting to see what Netflix does here. So you do have a gap fill there. The next target after 485 would be that gap filler around 507.15. So jumping over to Bitcoin here. So Bitcoin on the daily still has this bearish shark pattern play now, where it is trying to hold above target 2 here at 25.5. So what can we expect here harmonically for Bitcoin? So one thing I do want to talk about before I get into levels here for the harmonic patterns is that you do have a potential death cross approaching on the EMAs and the SMAs for Bitcoin here. So if that is to potentially play out, the next level I'd be looking again would be a retest of 25.5, and if it doesn't hold that level, I'd be looking to see it test the 200 EMA there at 24.6, then the 50 SMA there on 24.1. If it's not able to hold those levels, it could be very tricky here for Bitcoin, where I could see it potentially come back down to test 21,000. So to the upside, you definitely need to hold above target 2. I would like it to reclaim 27,000, come back up, reclaim target 2 at 28.1, and then hold above 30,000. If you could hold above 30,000, then maybe you could see that 31.8 again at hop. But very, very interesting where Bitcoin is right now in the weekly. The weekly, you are potentially coming down for a 2050 crossover. You also had a 921, and you could potentially be forming here some consolidation here between the 50 EMA and the 200 EMA. So the HSI is a bit oversold, so you could generate at any given moment an HSI arrow to the upside, indicating that a reversal is incoming. But we don't have a harmonic pattern here for Bitcoin here on the weekly. So right now, this could look like a potential bear flag here for Bitcoin on the monthly. Too early to tell, obviously, but definitely very tricky here for Bitcoin. If it does not find support here at 25.5, then I do see a bearish case scenario where you could come back down to 21K. So only time will tell. But that's all I want to share with you guys. I will be streaming same time as always, 15 minutes before the bell. So if you want to catch me there, you can link to my Twitch is in the description box below. So having said that, I hope you guys have a good rest of your Monday, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Take care, everybody, and peace.